What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Inside the Five. It's Griff,
Stuff.
and we will have William on this episode coming up in a little bit. But on this episode, we're going to be going over our Boston Celtics. I would say a tough weekend, Stav. We're going to be looking at that and then a look throughout the rest of this week. We're also going to be talking some college basketball. The regular season has ended. A big slate of Saturday's games, few upsets, a few games to decide who was going to be the regular season champion, and also it's tournament time. So conference tournaments, we're going to be talking a little bit about that. Obviously, me and Stav going to the Big East tournament. So a Big East podcast officially to end it. Stav will be leading us once again with some Bruins talk, the best team in hockey. Good episode. Will be here soon. But Stav, what do we say for now?
Let's do it. All right, everybody, welcome back to Inside the Five. And Griff, this was probably the worst weekend of Celtics basketball of the season, probably since last year around this time was the start of the Celtics run of dominance, essentially, where we've just been spoiled with excellent basketball. And then this weekend really made me question whether or not this team is legit. To be honest, this might be a little bit of an overreaction, but let's start on Friday's game against the Brooklyn Nets, where the Celtics led at one point, I think, in the second quarter by 28.
28, yep.
That lead dwindled down, and they ended up losing this game 115-105. Griff, what went wrong for the Celtics in this game?
Everything. I mean, when your best player is playing the small forward position and he gets outplayed by the other team's small forward, I mean, you would guess that your team's not going to win the game, and that's exactly what happened. Mikal Bridges, I mean, who I predicted once he got moved to the Nets was going to be the best player on this Brooklyn Nets team and take on the sort of role that he has. He had, I mean, a career night against the Boston Celtics, and that's been kind of the story of this weekend. We're going to talk about the Knicks game as well, but Mikal Bridges scores 38 points. He grabs 10 boards, 4 dimes, on only 2 turnovers. With that productivity rate, 2 turnovers isn't too bad at all. And Tatum, who's been struggling, had 22 points. He grabbed 13 boards, but 0 for 7 from the 3-point line. A guy, I mean, that was in the 3-point contest this year. My guess is that if you participate in the 3-point contest, you're not supposed to be going 0 for 7 from beyond 3-point line. But, I've been bashing Tatum like the past few episodes, and I've been waiting. I feel like I've been saying, like, maybe it's this game. Maybe it's this game for him. And I've just been kind of getting disappointed by this guy over and over again.
No, I mean, you're 100% right. And ever since the All-Star break, that's when I'm going to kind of date it back to. He hasn't been the MVP player that we essentially have been expecting. Yeah, WBev, but
sorry.
He hasn't been the MVP we were expecting him to be. He has not played up to the expectations that he set for himself, right? And if we just want to talk about his performance from beyond the arc, 0 of 7 on Friday, as you said, and then last night, what do you go, like 2 of 16, 3 of 16? I think he went 3 of 16 from 3 last night, which we'll get to that Knicks game, which was a whole debacle in itself. But Jason Tatum needs to step it the fuck up. And if he can't find it from beyond the arc, he's got to take it to the hole more often, because when he's taking it and driving into the lane, no one's stopping him. But he's just bailing the defense out by taking contested step back threes a lot of the time, which really is just frustrating in itself. And if you just looked at his box score without the shooting percentage, he put up a pretty decent stat line, right? 22, 13, 5, and a steal and 2 blocks. That's pretty damn good. But it's just 0 of 7 from 3. That cannot happen. That's essentially 7 possessions that I don't want to say turnovers, but when you miss 7 threes and you're 0 of 7, that's 7 wasted possessions, in my opinion. And especially when this Celtics team, since the All-Star break, hasn't really been great from beyond the arc. I mean, I don't have the numbers up with me. Last night they shot I think a franchise record 54 threes and only made 19 of them, something along those lines. That can't happen. Right? We have a really good team. We have a lot of slashers. We have a lot of guys that can finish inside the paint, and we're just going away from that. And Robert Williams got hurt in this game, and they're playing cautious with him, but it's This team is crumbling at the wrong time.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And just if you do want those numbers against the Nets on Friday night, 9 for 29 from three as a team, 31%. And then on Sunday against the Knicks, 59 attempts, 21 makes, 35%. So I mean, Jad just and it honestly, in my opinion, shows a lot more in this Knicks game because obviously they threw up 2 times as many threes, but it's not even just Jason Tatum, and we're harping on him because, of course, we're looking at this fat 0 for 7 in the 3-point line column. But I mean, even JB has been throwing up a good amount of threes. I mean, he went 3 for 8, so at least he made some of them. And I just feel like Marcus Smart has been jacking up shots. He did in the Knicks, 3 for 11 was Marcus Smart in the Sunday night game against the Knicks. It's just not a good look. And we're playing against a team, the Knicks, who shoot a lot as well. We shouldn't be matching that energy. I mean, it's literally the definition of playing down to your opponent, where the Boston Celtics have been the best offense in the league. That's where they were standing at when they were the best team in the league. Last year was our defense. This year, with Coach Joe Mazzulla, it's been more about our focus on offense, our focus on moving the ball, and we just haven't been moving the ball that much. Marcus Smart's been walking down the court, jacking up threes. Derek White's been bringing the ball down the court, trying to get down to the lane, shoot a little floater. And then there's Jason Tatum, who is 0 for 7 from 3 on Friday, 6 for 17 on Sunday. You still score 40 points, but you're taking 30 shots in an insufficient way. And obviously, it was very insufficient because we lost the game. And on Sunday night's game, obviously, I mean, just an absolutely crazy game. People would call it a thriller. I would agree. Double overtime. And if we want to talk about, I mean, teams looking at us and us being the team to beat, people put a circle around their game against the Celtics, and you can tell because Mikal Bridges scored 38 the other night, and then Emmanuel quickly goes out on Sunday night and scores 38 himself. I mean, I think that's a career high for him.
It is. I mean, granted, it was a lot of volume that went into Emmanuel Quickly's 38. Yep. He shot 28 shots. I mean, you should put up a decent stat line if you have the ability to put up 28 shots. But well-deserved. Well-deserved. I'm not taking anything away from it. He played 55 minutes in this game, and every time he got the ball, especially in that second overtime, we couldn't stop him in the first 3 possessions. I think first possession, he hit a 3, just walked right into a 3, and then he had a wide open dunk, and then he had a crazy lay. He really carried them in that double overtime period, and it was just pretty damn unfortunate. This game was a very winnable game, especially against the Knicks, who recently beat us in a pretty bad game when we both predicted that the Celtics would win. I think that was 2 weeks ago, and they just
not this past weekend, but the one before.
Yes, so they came out flat in that game. And then this is an opportunity to get revenge, especially against a team that doesn't have their leading scorer with Jalen Brunson, especially one of the guys who JJ Redick says has been playing the best basketball since January as a guard other than Damian Lillard, which I don't even hate that take. He's been playing excellent basketball. Mm-hmm. This was a chance for you to essentially take a break, right? This was a chance for you to take it to the Knicks. They don't have Jalen Brunson, who's the catalyst of that offense. And they fumbled the opportunity, and the Knicks really brought it to the Celtics. I never felt comfortable at any point in this game. I know the Celtics were up 14 late in the third quarter. That lead just blown like that. And credit to the Knicks. I mean, Emmanuel Quickly, RJ Barrett hit some big shots, and Julius Randle was just a force all throughout that game. But let's talk about the Celtics again. Jason Tatum, I said he went 3 of 17. He went 6 of 17, right? So over the past 2 games, he went 6 of 24 from 3. That's abysmal. I'm sorry, that cannot happen if you're the best player in the Boston Celtics. You're not. That's just a terrible stat line. Marcus Smart went 3 of 11, as you said. We shot 21 of 59 as a team. We shot 63s. I'm rounding up. Yeah. We shot 63s, made 21 of them. And Grant Williams, dude, you're asking for $20 million a year, and this is your chance. Brad Stevens. Coach Mazzulla, he ran a very small rotation. He essentially ran a 7-man rotation this game. But and Grant Williams was the focal point of that. He didn't play against Cleveland, and he played a big role in the last 2 games, and he sucked last night. He sucked. He was the reason why in that double overtime period when the Celtics were down 2, why the Celtics had to call a timeout. Joe Mazzulla wanted them to take it.
He didn't know what the play was.
Yeah, he didn't know what the play was. He messed it up. causing the Celtics to waste 12 seconds and then eventually having to take a timeout, which wasn't the worst thing in the world. They ended up getting a good shot for the win. I'm not mad at that last shot. It happens, right? I trust Horford to make
Horford, and Horford kind of carried us throughout that game. I mean, it shows that he was the only person that actually like surprised or shot well from behind the 3-point line.
And he put up a great stat line too. You put up 20, 14, and 6 out of Al Horford, who played 46 minutes. That's huge. Like a stat line like that, and the usage rate of Al Horford tonight. He's not playing against the Cavs. We'll get to the preview of that eventually, but it's just a disappointing game. And in overtime too, they had a chance to win it. They were tied. They had the ball last. That's a position you want to be in when the game's on the line. Tied, you have a chance to win it, and they just looked out of sync. Right, Jaylen Brown wasted about 10 seconds, got the ball to Jason Tatum with 3. Tatum got a good chance. He got a good move, couldn't finish. That was tough. I thought that was going to go in, but it's just tough. It was a tough loss, something you didn't want to happen, especially right now after coming off of the worst loss of the season against the Nets. You needed to respond, and now you go to Cleveland tonight, and you don't have 3 of your 5 starters with Jason Tatum, Rob Williams, and Al Horford.
Yeah, and I like this game. I like this game a lot because I feel like what they did this weekend was an absolute reverse of what we thought they were going to do. So, with having Tatum, Horford, Williams out, I think this is a big game for Jaylen Brown. I think that this is an absolutely giant game for Grant Williams because, as you said, he's been – essentially kicked out of the rotation, and he didn't play in the last Cavs game because of how big the bigs are from Cleveland. He's going to have to play today. We don't have any bigs. We're going to be using Muscala. We're going to be using Luke Cornett. We don't even have Tatum, who runs the 4 at times. We're going to need him. We might see a little Blake Griffin tonight too.
I bet he starts.
We're going to see a good amount of this bench, and we're going to need it. Pritchard might get some minutes tonight. I know he's a guard, but looking at this game, Cleveland favored by 8 points, and obviously the over set at 218. We haven't hit the over in a week and a half. We haven't been scoring points. That's supposed to be the best part of our game, and I think if we win this game tonight, it's going to be because Jaylen Brown drops 35. He grabs 6 boards and has 5 assists. But if we lose this game tonight, it's because Marcus Smart is jacking up a shit ton of shots again like he did last game. And I'm getting scared because this is the time of the year when we're wait, Marcus Smart might ruin our season. Marcus Smart's just not completely locked in yet on the offensive side. He should literally just be moving the ball. I'm sick of – we say it every year. We say it every single year. I'm sick of watching Marcus Smart shoot the ball. He just pisses me off at this point. Especially if you're going to be putrid from beyond the line, just stop doing it. Give it to your best players and, essentially do your job. Play defense, move the ball around. Derek White's our scoring guard, and then we have Jaylen Brown tonight. Grant Williams going to have to score a couple points tonight if he even plays. If Grant Williams does not play tonight, I'm going to make the prediction that Grant Williams isn't a Celtic next year because he's going to want 20 mil, and you can't get 20 mil if you can't play in every game because you don't fit against another team.
Yeah.
Will, welcome to the episode.
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
No, 100% agree with that. And I was going to say tonight's actually, I think, one of the more momentum games for us this season. I know we're playing men down, but I think having Jaylen Brown out there and us throwing out a lineup, I think if we can come out at least better than we did against the Knicks and possibly try to scrap this game out and possibly win, I think that's big momentum-wise, especially after taking just such a bad loss last night to the Knicks.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's essentially a scheduled loss. The Celtics are kind of throwing in the white towel in a way where last night you have guys playing extended minutes, right? You go to double overtime. Guys are playing over 50 minutes, which is not good, especially when you have to travel to go on a second night of a back-to-back. Cleveland's favored by 7.5 tonight or 8 points. It's expected that the Cavs are going to win this game, right?
Yes.
And I'm not expecting a win for the Celtics tonight. And the keys to victory, Jaylen Brown has to be on one. He can't turn over the ball, and he's got to really give energy to this lineup again, which is going to be tough playing over 50 minutes on the second night of a back-to-back on the road. This is one of those games where it's like you think that there's no chance, but then maybe they come out and surprise you, right? Because maybe guys like Peyton Pritchard step up. Malcolm Brogdon's going to play. He didn't play last night, and he'll probably be off the bench. The starting five tonight's probably going to be Smart, White, JB, Blake Griffin, and Grant Williams, or some sort of –
or maybe like Cornette with Blake or with
because of the size. It might be Cornette. It might be Muscala. We don't know. I'm excited to see it, to be honest. I'm excited to see how this lineup clicks because Cleveland can't defend. No. I mean, interior defense is pretty good with Mobley and Jared Allen.
They have the size down there.
Yeah, they can't defend the wing. What they have in size down low, they lack in size at the guards, right? Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell are smaller 1 and 2 guards. And who's their 3 who starts? Okoro? He's a smaller 3. So who do you put on Jaylen Brown?
And I don't know if Donovan Mitchell's playing today.
Yeah, he's day to day. I assume actually if I'm Cleveland and he's on the – I mean, I'm just saying this just because. But I'll play him tonight if Jason Tatum's not playing.
He did go through Monday morning shoot around.
He probably will.
It's looking like he's gonna play, but it's a finger injury, so it's not like anything too special. If Donovan Mitchell doesn't play tonight, I mean, you got to take the Celtics. You got to just pray because at some point something's gonna happen with this team where we got to get back on track because we're slipping real hard. We're at 45-20 right now, which obviously sounds good. But I mean, the way that we were looking at the Celtics was we're on pace for 60 wins. I don't know if we're going to get to that point now, but we're a game and a half back on Milwaukee. We're only 3 games in front of Philadelphia, and we've lost 2 in a row. Who's to say we don't lose to the Cavs who's to say we don't lose to the Cavs tonight, and then we have the Trailblazers again on Wednesday, and the Trailblazers have been spotty where Dame can come out and drop 50, drop 40 points, and I mean, it's a scary road, and we're getting through that bulk of the season like we talked about where we're getting through these Cavs games, Knicks games, Nets games, and it should ease off. We just need to get to that point very soon, and we need to win those games that we should be winning, and we're just not doing that right now.
I mean, last episode we talked about it, the road ahead for the Celtics, and I'm pretty sure I went on a limb and said that they could probably win with the 22 remaining games that they had at the time. That they, or what was it, 19? I think that I said they could go 16-3, maybe even 15-4, whatever it was. They already dropped 2 of those. I mean, let's look at the road ahead for this week. Tonight at Cleveland, which we're kind of saying is going to be a loss if Donovan Mitchell plays. Then we have Portland at home, and then we go to Atlanta. You know, like you said, Portland's a team that could randomly come out and put up 150 points, right? Damian Lillard's on one. Ever since the new year, essentially, he's been on one. He's been playing as a top guard in the entire NBA, and the guys around him are randomly spotty, right? You got Jeremy Grant, you got Cam Reddish, who both of those guys are playing pretty decently for their standards. And then you go to Atlanta on Saturday. Trae Young's obviously there. I don't really think Atlanta's that good, but then you could randomly get one of those nights. DeJounte Murray scored 41 the other night. So they got 2 insane guards, and if you're not on your game defensively, they will make you pay. So the Celtics really need to pick it up, especially because we're going on such an easy stretch up until, I'm going to say, like the Kings game a few weeks from now. That's kind of back to where, okay, the Kings are a pretty good team, right? I have no problem saying the Kings are a pretty good team, and that might be a challenge for us. We got to get some wins before then so we can get a little momentum heading into the last half of the year.
Yeah, I mean, but it's gonna go. We need, out of those 3 games that you said, Cleveland, Portland, Atlanta, we need 2 out of 3 of those games, and that's not a guarantee. But I mean, just looking out at it, if Rob Will can't stay healthy, if we're relying on Al Horford to be our 3rd, sometimes 2nd best player on nights when Jason Tatum is just collapsing, and I want to have a whole episode, like a whole hour-long talk about how disappointing Jason Tatum is to me this season. And I know he's putting up the numbers, but ever since his shoe came out and he dropped however many points he dropped to be All-Star Game MVP, and then he talks about how, like, yeah, he needed to get this because his shoe just dropped. It's the first year that Kobe's name was on it or whatever. And then you go out a week after, and in a game you get tossed. You were like, oh, it's the first time I get tossed. Kobe got tossed. All these legends got tossed, blah, blah, blah. He's kind of just like checking things off of his list where it's like, okay, like I need to get these intangibles. I need to get these self-achievements. And it's kind of gotten out of hand after the shoe release. And I like the shoes. I like the shoes a lot. And the new blue ones that he just dropped were pretty cool. But he's a little too focused. And I mean, this is like the Walmart, or actually, this is the PG version of John Morant's situation where it's like he's getting to the point of superstardom. What's he going to do now? Jason Tatum's going try hard superstardom, and John Morant's gonna lose all of it. But that's a talk for another time as well. But I can't go more than 15, and it shows on this podcast, 15, 20 minutes without like really wanting to get upset about the road that Jason Tatum is taking. And I know it's an overreaction, but if we keep losing games like this, then everybody's going to come to agree with me. So it's either I overreacted or I was one of the first ones to call it. I'm just calling my shot, essentially.
Essentially, you can like see it brewing up like on a day-to-day basis, just from interviews, post-game interviews, and just the way he's acting on the court. And like, especially like last night, like when they were trying to run that play at the end of the game, like he was getting like fed up as if like they weren't trying. Like obviously, like something did go wrong, but like I feel like just as like we've always been, like no one gets that visibly angry when we're playing. Like it's like the communication just seems so off.
Yeah, and it has been. And obviously that one play is a result of Grant Williams just being an absolute idiot and not knowing the play. But I mean, it's the same thing. It's a whole team thing right now where I feel like last year, it was like the first year, obviously, that we made the finals. After you make the finals, it's all right. You've solidified your spot as one of the best players in the NBA. And Jaylen Brown has honestly done the same. He solidified himself as an all-star. Grant Williams is, I mean, a person that could start on any other team, apparently, after the last finals run that we had after last season. That's what everybody was saying. Same with Derek White. Like, we have all these people, and the egos get big after your first championship appearance. The big issue was we're moving on from our coach. It looks good. And once Coach Joe Mazzulla gets his, interim tag taken off and he's a full-time coach, I feel like we've been a lot worse since then. I don't know what's happening. I don't know if the locker room is losing or if he's losing the locker room or if, the locker room is just too big for him. Like, because that's what happens in the NBA. And I just feel like there's an issue with a lot of things. The rotational issues with the Celtics is players that should be playing every night aren't playing every night because we're taking too much of an analytical approach. So Grant Williams, Stav, like you said earlier on the episode, some nights he's not playing, some nights he is playing. On Sunday night, it showed up that a lack of a young player playing will lead to mistakes. And you put him out there in a late game situation and Jason Tatum is screaming at him, trying to tell him what play we're running. And he's sitting in the right corner. And you can clearly tell as a person watching the screen that he is supposed to be on the other corner because that's where every other person is on the court. I mean, it's just there's a lot of issues that we had this year that we didn't really have last year, and it's a direct result of the change of coaching because when you take a defensive mindset and a Coach Ime Udoka mindset, honestly, of hard-nosed defense being the best defensive team in the league, there's a certain level of discipline and focus that you have to have compared to going out there and you're like, okay, if we score 135, 140 points in a night, we're going to go out there and win a game. And that's kind of what we're doing this year.
Yeah, it's kind of what since the All-Star break, I want to say, what it reminds me of really is the basketball we played before January last year. And it sucks to see that, to be honest, because we know what this team is capable of. Our complaints come from a spot where we know how good this team actually is and how well this team can perform, especially under the spotlight. And then you have 2 back-to-back national TV games where you underperform a shit ton. Like, it's not even like, oh, shoot, The Nets really just outperformed us there. They were hitting all their shots. No, you blew a 28-point lead. And then you talk about the Knicks last night. It wasn't like, oh, Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle, they're a reason why they're two all-stars. No, Jalen Brunson didn't play. I mean, it just caused an effect ever since the All-Star break where this team really hasn't had a win that we walk away from like, all right, whew, thank God we've had that. I mean, I'll literally go through it off the top of my head. Game against Indiana, they took us to overtime. They aren't really, they're the 10th, they're the 11th seed right now. That's a team you have to take to overtime. Next game, you go to Philly. That's a pretty good win, all things considered. It took you a game-winning shot to beat them and literally 0.1 seconds away from that game to go in overtime. Then you face the Knicks, right? You lose that game by 14. Jaylen Brown didn't play, but Jason Tatum played atrociously. Then you face Cleveland. You have that win. You were up 20 at one point in that game, and then you let the lead dwindle down. They only won that game by 4. I know it was kind of a backdoor cover by the Cavs, but still, you have to control the entire possession. You don't know what's going to happen. If you, especially come playoff basketball and more meaningful games, if you're up 20, you got to increase that lead to 30. You can't let that drop down to 10 because once it's a 10-point game in today's NBA, anything can happen. Then you have Brooklyn Friday night, 28-point lead blown. And then you go last night, double overtime loss to a Jalen Brunson-less New York Knicks team. And now you go tonight, second night on the road of a back-to-back. What happens, right? Can this team actually overcome adversity? Can this team play good defense? And can they beat a team when your back is on the wall? This is the worst possible position you could be in. I'm not saying record-wise, but I'm saying the circumstances of the game. You're missing 3 of your 5 starters, as I've said. You're coming off of a double overtime game. You have to take a plane to go face a pretty good Cleveland Cavaliers team and facing one of the best players in the NBA, Donovan Mitchell. This is a tough game. This could be a scheduled loss. How does this team respond is what I'm looking to see.
Yeah, and I mean, we could beat around the bush and keep, repeating things. But, I mean, once again, I feel like we say on every episode, we just got to go out there and see what they do. And I would love a win tonight against the Cavaliers. It's not a guarantee, like you said. Missing out on a lot of players. We have a good game that can get us back into rhythm against Damian Lillard and the Trailblazers. In my opinion, if you're looking at a person for that game on Wednesday, it would be Marcus Smart. I want to see what he's going to do against Damian Lillard. And I feel like what Marcus Smart does in that game is going to tell us a lot about what the rest of the season is going to hold. But before we kind of overwater that section, I said we move on to a little bit of college ball. You guys cool with that?
Yeah, 100%. I didn't want to get a headache.
All right. Yeah. I mean, I'm already well on my way to one, but let's dive into the beautiful world of college basketball. Starting with the end of the regular season, conference tournament brackets have been set. Conferences have been won on Saturday. And I guess we'll start it off with that, a little bit off schedule from what we talked about. But how about the ACC coming down to Saturday night? And when you think of the ACC, you think of Virginia, Duke, UNC, Pittsburgh, Miami, the Panthers I want to say their first chance maybe ever to win the ACC. They went down to Miami to face the Hurricanes, a very experienced squad. Isaiah Wong led the way, not in scoring, but I mean, one of the best defensive guards in the nation. Kind of the team just took over, a very deep team, ended up winning the game by 2 points. These two teams, I mean, in the ACC, we've been paying a lot of attention, and I'm not going to be talking about Duke versus UNC that game because, I mean, it was a very, very weird game, very bad game in my opinion. But looking at these two teams in the ACC, I love these two teams to beat Virginia. I love these two teams to meet each other once again in the conference tournament final. And I like both of these teams to make a little run in March Madness. I think that both of these teams are very experienced. Miami, I think, well-deserved that win. And Miami's a team, I mean, last year we were talking about Miami, right? And who did they lose? They didn't lose anybody. They still have their 2 guards that they have. Isaiah Wong has been there for about 45 years. They have bigs. Their biggest issue, in my opinion, would be their rebounding. But, I mean, they out-rebounded Pitt by 20 last game. So, looks pretty good. But in terms of the ACC this year, guys, it's funny that it has to come down to a game between Pittsburgh and Miami. That's not exactly what you think would happen. But I mean, just looking out, do we like one of these teams to win the ACC, or are we looking at a team like Clemson still, or maybe Duke, who's now ranked 21st in the nation? And I mean, just another thing, Virginia, who is right there with Miami at the 2 seed. So do we like a Miami? Do we like a Pittsburgh Stav, or are we liking someone else out of there?
Well, I'm going to tell you teams that I'm completely out on in the ACC, right? I mean, not completely out on, but I don't like, right? I don't like Virginia anymore. I think that they've taken way too many close losses, especially down the stretch. Clemson really doesn't do it for me. I don't think that they're necessarily experienced enough. I don't think that they're better than either of the teams we just talked about in Pitt and Miami. But I do like both of these teams. Both of these teams aren't something where you can just overlook, right? And you said it best. I don't remember the last time Pittsburgh had a chance to win the ACC. It's always been run by
They were
Duke.
in the Big East in like 07. I think they came to the ACC, and I mean, this year might be completely wrong, but around that 2010, 2011 year.
Yeah.
And I mean, since then, I mean, I didn't even know that they played ACC basketball.
Exactly. And I think that's for a reason. And now that I think Pitt athletics and just in general are on the come up, right? We've seen a lot of guys. Yep. In football, we see Kenny Pickett going out, first round pick. They were ranked. They had a pretty good bowl game. They've had good seasons consecutively. And let's talk about Miami. Miami is that one Florida State loss away from probably being a top 10 ranked team in the AP poll. They're a pretty good team. They're very balanced and they're very experienced. And that's how you win come March. You need to be experienced. Definitely. You need to be poised. You need to be well coached, and you need to be able to. It's a very balanced attack, right? You look at this box score; they got scoring from everywhere, right? All their starters were scoring besides Walker. But still, you got guys coming off the bench who are scoring 18 and 15. That's huge, especially in these big games. This was a very close game, and when their backs were against the wall, essentially, they turned the ball over 16 times. They lost a turnover battle, and usually in college, especially in these closer games where 78 to 76, usually that's the nail in the coffin when you turn the ball over. But they overcame it. They played well, and shout out Pitt. If I had to pick one of these two teams, I'm taking Miami to make a deeper run, but Pitt is definitely a team you don't want to overlook.
Yeah, and Miami is obviously the 1 seed, and Pitt. Actually, the ACC is very contested around that ranking where it's – wait, let me get the exact number. This is, once again, bad journalism, and I just had it up. But ACC was 15 – or in the ACC, if you're around like that 14-6, 15-5 mark, if you're 15-5, you could have been the 1 seed. And if you're 14-6, you could have either been the 3 seed or, as bad as it gets, which is what happened with Pittsburgh losing, they got the 5 seed. Which means they're going to have to play the winner of – this is a lot of information right now. Sorry, guys. They're going to have to play the winner of Florida State and Georgia Tech. So that should be an easy game, the 12 versus the 13. But if Pitt wins that game, their next game is against Duke, the Blue Devils, who will obviously not a team that we like, but a team that got a big win on Saturday, whether you like it or not, giving them the 4 seed. Now they have to play a team like Pitt compared to if they were to lose to UNC, they have to play maybe a Boston College and then a Virginia. They get an extra round off for a bye playing a Pitt team. Duke versus Pitt, not a game that you would suspect to be like a big rivalry or whatever, but it's going to be a great game. And looking at that top side of the bracket, would you like Duke to beat Pitt? And then moving on even further from then, would you like Miami over both of those teams, or where do you really find yourself in this ACC tournament? I mean, because it is packed up at the top.
It is packed, and we're taking a look at obviously the ACC itself. There's a lot of teams here that you don't want to see come the tournament time, like the real tournament time. There's a lot of competitive teams. A lot of these teams can easily take out your favorite squad any night of the week. I mean, Pitt and Miami, mainly the big two that we're talking about here. I think I like Pitt over Duke, and I obviously that can be a little biased because I am a UNC fan, but I still think by far I think Pitt wins that battle. They're just more of a tight knit group. They play scrappy. They have a reason to want to win this. They want to keep striving in the right direction, and I think for a team like Pitt, they would take a big advantage from going deep in the ACC tournament and going into March with head held high. And I think for a team like Pitt to either lose off early, still make it into the tournament, I think that leaves them in a weird spot. I feel like that leaves them in territory where they get into a team where they play someone good, and then they're like, oh, damn, well, we lost to Duke in that round, and it was a close game, and like Duke's not even really that good, like we're better than them. They're going to start getting in their own heads. And for a team like Pitt, kind of on the come up, we don't really hear about them too much in basketball. I think that's key for them to beat Duke and try to move on.
Yeah, and that game is really, if they beat Duke, they'll probably get a 6 seed, maybe a 5 seed. If they lose to Duke, you're exactly right. Then they have around 2.5 weeks off, and they're looking back at that Saturday game against Miami, where it's like, if we won this game, we could have been the 1 seed, but now we're the 5 seed. We have to play Duke. We lose to Duke. We only made it to the second round of the ACC tournament, being the 5th seed in the ACC. Where's our ranking going to be? They might end up, even though being ranked, they could end up being maybe a last 4 in type team and having to play as an 11 seed against an 11 seed on opening day, and getting an extra game in there is good for some teams. It's bad for others, and you don't know exactly what you're going to get from this tournament. The last thing I do want to say about the ACC is looking at our team real quick, the Tar Heels. They're going to have to play the winner of Boston College versus Louisville. Love it. Louisville is the worst team in, the ACC, maybe in fucking college basketball. They suck. BC, they're flashy. They have their moments. They beat Virginia. They gave it to UNC, but we got a big win against them this year. I like us to beat either of those teams, and then we play 2-seeded Virginia. I like us against Virginia. We beat them. We're either going to have to play NC State or Clemson. That's when it gets a little shaky. But if we can get past that, I don't really mind UNC's path. If they can get to the ACC championship game, then we're talking about them being into March Madness. And taking the loss to Duke really screwed them over. But that's the situation, the scenario that we're looking at now.
Well, we talk about UNC kind of lacking in the regular season, right? And I have the bracket up right in front of me. They probably have the easiest path for a non-bye team to get to the championship. Yeah, I was thinking to cap them off in the semifinals. No, I think that they have a very good path to go. We say, I assume they'll face BC. They'll beat BC. In this stretch, they'll beat BC. Virginia, they match up well with. They've beaten them before. That can happen again. Then you get to the semifinal, and you're
maybe Clemson, maybe NC State.
Yeah,
I like how we match up against Clemson more than I like how we match up against NC State.
Yes, I agree. I'll assume that it'll be Clemson just based off of seeding, right? But this North Carolina team, a very similar team to what we saw last year, make a championship run. The only difference between this team and last year's team is this year's team didn't have the momentum wins going into the ACC tournament, right? And that's what.
And they didn't have that beautiful 6'7" long-haired caveman splashing threes. Instead, we have Pete Nance, who's been averaging 18 games since the Lemon Oreo came out, but then put up 3 against Duke. The one time I put him on my private story, and it was like, oh, he's been averaging 18 points. I'll show him some love. The Cookie Monster, that's his new nickname, comes out and he drops 3 points. How many times have I ragged Pete Nance on this show?
Yeah.
Maybe every single time we talk about UNC, I gave him a chance on Saturday. I was like, maybe it's his moment. He's going to drop 30 and he's going to be like one of our best players. No, he still sucks.
We've both gotten got by Pete Nance this year. I feel like on numerous occasions, we're like, hey, Pete Nance, he's having a great game, having a great stretch right here. Immediately once I say that, he has like the worst game of his life the following time. I don't get it.
It's just upsetting. He sucks. But I feel like we covered a good amount of the ACC.
What's wrong with Caleb?
What'd you say?
Before we move on from the ACC, what's wrong with Caleb Love? Like, he's just playing a bit of basketball. Anytime that the spotlight's on him since this season overall.
Yeah.
Him and RJ Davis have been playing better, but Caleb Love hasn't been good.
I was going to say that exact thing.
Like, where we were talking about how he could possibly be in the NBA last year after the tournament, right? After this year, I don't see him going anywhere after college. Like,
no, I could easily see him staying another year at UNC, and it's just the fact that last year he was put in a very good situation where he didn't have to handle the ball as much as he really does this year, because even though Brady Manick played the 4, there was a lot of times where the ball was in Brady Manick's hands, whether that be in the post or at the wing or, driving, making plays. But at the beginning of the season, we were like, okay, here's the torch. Here's the offense. You are our point guard. RJ Davis is going to run the two, right? And we kind of separated those two, where last year you kind of saw both of them. It looked like we had 2 point guards out there and it worked very well, right? RJ Davis has stepped up and he's been a scorer for us. And that's exactly what we asked for him. Whereas Caleb Love, we've kind of asked him not to take a step back, but to take on a different role where it's like Armando Bacot's the best player on the floor whenever he's out there, and that's how it should be, and he should have the ball in his hands. Caleb Love, your job is to give the ball to him or give the ball to somebody else so they can score. Instead of letting him, I mean, he's a kid that last year he got a lot of love because of how tough he is. He's a St. Louis kid. He can get to the rim. He can hit threes. He can do all these things, and you're exactly right, Stav. He just I don't know what happened to him, but the role that he has been playing for this team is very different from the way that in the style, honestly, that he was playing last year. That he doesn't play with as much freedom. He doesn't play as loose as I feel like he played last year. And I don't know if that's because of injuries, because he has been dealing with injuries on and off. But I mean, you're exactly right. And that's been one of the keys for exactly why UNC started the season as the number 1 seed. And now we're talking about how far do they have to make it in this ACC tournament to even have a chance, to make March Madness. But let's move on to another game on Saturday. A big game at Texas. Kansas, who had already won the Big 12 regular season title, went out for a big, I would say, little momentum game at Texas. If they get this win, it's a big one. But I do want to say, don't call this an upset. Texas, the top 10 team in the nation. And I feel like we were talking about how much we don't love Texas. But as that comes through, I do want to say that Serge Rice is the best 6-man in the nation. And there's no reason why he shouldn't be a starter on this team. I mean, Serge Rice he would start at UNC. He would start at Miami. He would start at Pittsburgh. He would start at all these ACC schools. He would probably be a 6-man at Kansas because Kansas is disgusting. But Serge Rice put on an absolute show on Saturday. He dropped 23 and 7 off the bench, which you don't see that often off the bench in college basketball. This is a very deep team in Texas and a good ramp-up win before getting into the Big 12 tournament. And Stav, we've been talking about Kansas where, I mean, we like them to win the national championship. How much do you think that this game and almost a 20-point loss – do you think it really affects them as much as it would, say, maybe 2 weeks ago?
No. To be honest, it's one of those games where this was a Texas game. The Texas Longhorns, there was no doubt that the Texas Longhorns were going to win this game from the opening tip. And the one thing that does concern me a little bit is Grady Dick's ability to really perform on the road and in big-time games. We really haven't seen him exceed expectations in these type of games. I'm not worried about Jalen Wilson. He's a stud. But Grady Dick, he's supposed to be the number 2 on this team, and he really underperformed. You can't put up 6 points as a number 2 on a team that really, at the end of this week, could have been ranked the number 1 team in the nation if they won this game.
And I would argue that they still should be the number 1 team in the nation. And I don't want to talk too much about Houston because Houston sucks and I hate them. But they only won by 2 points to Memphis, and I consider that if they were to play maybe Rutgers and they were in the Big 10, I think that's a 15, 20-point loss. I think that's like what it compares to. I think Kansas should be the number 1 team in the country. Win or loss on this, and it is Monday. So I actually don't know if any rankings have come out.
I think the final AP ranking was released this morning, no?
Okay, yeah, here it is. Houston's still the 1. UCLA is now the 2. They had a big game on Saturday. Kansas still the 3. Yep, and Bama is the 4. But looking at the Big 12, Kansas obviously the 1 seed. You're exactly right about Grady Dick. It's just the fact that Grady Dick, when he's put in a position to just, stand there and shoot, he's awesome. But if you lock him off, you don't really have to pay that much attention to him because he's not going to beat you off ball. He's not looking to move. He's not looking to make cuts, and he's athletic. Like, he should be looking to make these plays. And not only were we looking at Grady Dick as a number 2 option on a national championship winning team, but we were looking at him as a 6'7" shooting guard who could be a lottery pick in the NBA draft. Just the way, I mean, I guess you could say hustle, the way that he hustles, the amount of work that he wants to put in when the ball isn't in his hands on offense is very lackluster. He doesn't move off ball. He doesn't look to get to open spots on the floor. And there's a lot of times, and I mean, I'm not the only one that said this. I'm not gonna. It wasn't Dickie V who was on the call, but somebody was talking about it on the ESPN broadcast in this game, and that's when I really picked it up, and I just started watching him throughout the whole game. When he doesn't have the ball in his hands, he's just sitting in the corner. Like he's not moving, and he's letting Jalen Wilson work, which makes sense. But I mean, roam the 3-point line, cut through the baseline, do something. You're athletic. You can make cuts, and you're 6'7". And in college basketball, you can either be a 6'7" shooting guard or a 6'7" center. So if you're 6'7", you're dunking on people at that point with that athleticism that Grady Dick has. He should be doing a lot more for that team, and he hasn't been. And it's been like that for a few weeks now. He's had a few big games, but really nothing too special. And you're just really looking at Jalen Wilson to carry, I mean, the bulk of that offense. And the defense has been good from Kansas, and it always will be. But looking at that loss, I don't think it's anything to really take to heart. You just have to be looking about how that offense moves off ball and how well the players around Jalen Wilson play, because it can't continue to be this one-man show. And Texas really put that on a spotlight. So the Big 12 is very fun to watch, and we've been talking about it all year.
And even the team, we said this last episode too, even the teams at the kind of at the bottom of the Big 12 are giving the teams at the top a run for their money. And this isn't just a shot in the dark with Grady Dick. Like, we can't classify this as an off game. Literally look at their last game against Texas Tech, a close game. He fucking sucked.
He had 4?
He had 4 points. He didn't make a field goal.
They're all free throws, yeah. Yep.
That can't happen, especially if you're supposed to be this highly recruited guy and you're supposed to be the number 2. I think he's a 5-star. That can't happen.
He was 5-star. McDonald's All-American.
Yeah, exactly. And this look, I don't want to just speak out of my ass when I say this, but it looks like for Grady Dick, this is the first time in his entire basketball career where he's facing talent that is equal to him or better than him, and he doesn't know how to overcome that. And that's just unacceptable, especially when the game is so narrowed down and everything's under a microscope. When you talk about the tournament and the expectations for this Kansas team, they'll be a 1 seed in the tournament, right? We know that. How does he respond when shit hits the fan, right? We saw it with the Kansas team last year in the national championship. They were down 15 at half, and that team responded in the second half. Does this team have the same fortitude to essentially do that? I don't think so. I think when shit hits the fan for this team, everything just crumbles. And it's unfortunate to say that. I hate saying that because I do like Kansas. It's just Grady Dick is a number 2 right now, is underperforming a shit ton. He has time to make it up and prove me wrong, and I hope he proves me wrong. But right now, his last 2 games and this last stretch for him is really concerning.
Yeah, and you can't be overreacting in the Big 12, because even with Kansas being the 1 seed, that means the first game they're probably going to play Texas Tech, which is the exact game that you were just talking about in the regular season. Grady Dick only had 4 points. And once they win that, then you have to play Baylor. So just straight off the bat, I mean, you're playing difficult games in the Big 12 tournament. You're going to have to play Baylor, and then you're going to have to play either a K-State, a TCU, or a Texas in that championship game. And I think that not only are they going to be a 1 seed in March Madness, but I think as long as they get to the championship game, they'll be a 1 seed. I don't think they have to win the Big 12, but I think that they could, and I think that they will end up winning the Big 12, and I think it's going to be a large part because of Jalen Wilson and his ability to play basketball. Obviously, in that game on Saturday, he matched Serge Ibaka-Rice with 23 points. But the last game I want to talk about before we get on to a little Bruins talk, as well as the last tournament bracket I want to talk about, is the game between Villanova and UConn at Villanova. 14-seeded Huskies. Stav, we were saying maybe we could go into this as a trap game with the way that Villanova has been kind of heating up, sneaking over 500 for the season, looking to get over 500 for their conference standings as well. But I mean, UConn kind of just put them to bed in this game. And this was a big momentum game for UConn, who, like we've been saying, was a 1 seed at one point in this season. We wanted to see how maybe people like a Donovan Clingan was going to fit into this team, who was very successful earlier in the season, finished the game only playing 13 minutes against Villanova. And obviously they didn't play all of their starters, and Clingan is one of their starters. But it was a great game for UConn to kind of use their bench, and people stepped up. I mean, Alex Karabin, shout out to our CMAS guys, had a good game in this game. He doesn't start every single game. He's averaging around 10 a game. He dropped 16 in this game. He has 6 rebounds, 4 assists, and a steal, 3 blocks as well. That's a very good stat line from someone that's going to be a wing for that team, a very tall team. And in the Big East, looking at the tournament, I mean, this is a jam-packed tournament. This is what we want to see at MSG. And UConn, with that win, secured their spot in the quarterfinals straight up. First game against Providence, the Friars. And I mean, this is exactly goes to my point that this is a crazy conference. We have Marquette, who finished in the 1 seed. Xavier to finish with the 2 seed, as we said they would. Same with Creighton at the 3. And then it was really up to that 4 versus 5. UConn with the win actually grabbed it. Doesn't really mean too much. But just looking at this conference, I mean, I could see Villanova making a run. I could see if Providence can get UConn, I could see them beating Marquette in the semis. There's a lot of ways I could see this thing going. And Stav, I don't know if you have the bracket up yet, do you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I mean, just looking at that top side of the bracket where you have St. John's, or where you have Marquette, and they'll probably play St. John's, and then UConn versus Providence. Who do you like in those 2 games up top?
I mean, I can't pick against Marquette until they prove otherwise, in my opinion. They've had a great stretch run towards the end to essentially lock up this 1 seed in the Big East. So I'm going to take them over what I would assume to be St. John's. I'll take St. John's over Butler. And UConn and Providence, really up to this point, has really been a coin flip, right?
Yeah.
And
definitely.
In what's essentially a neutral site in New York between the 2 teams, give me UConn. I think their size is too much for Providence, and I think that they stretch the floor a lot better, and they're a lot more poised. And then you got the big matchup between Marquette and UConn. That's just going to be a treat to watch. That's another game where I just flip a coin. I have no idea who's going to win, but every time I pick against UConn, they prove me wrong. And every time I pick against Marquette, they prove me wrong. So it's one of those things where I'm clueless, but I'm going to root for UConn in that game.
And you know what? This is like a great year of Big East basketball, because when you think of Marquette basketball and you think of the style of basketball that they play, at the ceiling of Marquette basketball, this is the exact team. Like, they're fast-paced, they're fun, they shoot the ball, they play great defense. I mean, they're all around just a great team. And then I would say the same thing with UConn, where they have a guard, they have a wing, and they have a big or 2, where it's like you have a person at every single level. That's exactly what UConn does. UConn runs that New England, that maybe even New York style of basketball, where it's like, we're going to just beat you with our talent on the floor, with our technique, and that would be a very fun game. And Will, looking at the bottom of this bracket, obviously Xavier and Creighton on 2 byes. I would say between the game of Seton Hall and DePaul, I would take Seton Hall. And then I have Villanova, obviously, over Georgetown, who is the worst team in the Big East. So the Villanova would be taking on Creighton in this hypothetical, and Seton Hall would be taking on Xavier. You like those top dogs to win, and if not, maybe a little Villanova run. What are we thinking from that bottom half of the Big East bracket?
Obviously, 2 good teams. I think let's see. It's Villanova versus Creighton, right?
Yep, Villanova, Creighton, and Seton Hall, Xavier.
I like Xavier advancing there, and I like Villanova possibly getting an upset there. I think Villanova is always a team you can throw in the mix for an upset. They're always a team that you can kind of just they're there. They linger around, and they're always going to be good. They're always going to be a team. And you're like, oh well, maybe they're not having like the best season, but they're still there. Like they're still there. So I think definitely out of anyone to kind of make a little bit of a run there, it would definitely be Villanova. But obviously, two good teams with Crane and Xavier. But I think Xavier has that one, and Villanova will take it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Just with that point with Villanova, I feel like that's what we've been talking about pretty much their whole season, where it's their first season with a new coach. Jay Wright's been there for 500 million years, and he's finally out of town. You expect them to have that down year, but once again, they're Villanova. They still have some of those recruits that their old coach brought in, and I mean, a few of them probably left in the transfer portal. But you're exactly right, and looking at this, I think I like just in the final, because I had you two kind of cover up to the semis. In the final, I think this year I'm liking UConn losing to Xavier. I think Xavier pulls off some sort of run where they get through Seton Hall with ease, and then Creighton kind of gives them a tough time, but Creighton's they're a team that just shoots the three ball very efficiently. I think Xavier gets it done on defense. And then in the final, I have UConn collapsing because I feel like they do it all the time. And I have Xavier taking the Big East. That's just my little prediction. But that covers our college basketball section for today. Stav, take me to the world of ice.
All right, welcome back to the world of ice. How about this back-to-back episodes talking about hockey? And the Bruins exceeded expectations. Since the last time we recorded, they faced the Buffalo Sabres and the New York Rangers, right? They absolutely dominated against the Sabres, absolutely killed them 7-1. This at one point was a closer game. Bruins are only up 3-1, I think, in the third period late, and then they just rattled off 4 goals in the last 4 minutes of the game, which is just absolutely unreal. A very balanced attack from the Bruins in that game, 7-1. It was never in doubt, and this was one of the best games that we've seen out of Jeremy Swayman this season, only allowing 1 goal against a pretty exciting young Buffalo Sabres team who they've given great teams run for their money all season, right? And I'm impressed they put up 7 against this team, but nothing really surprises me when we talk about this Boston Bruins team. If you want to look at goals and stuff, everyone basically scored. I mean, Bergeron scored. You got 2 goals out of Jacob Lackow, who has gotten very limited ice time. David Pastrnak scored a goal. I think this was his first game after he signed the extension, which is just awesome to see. You got Zaka, who scored, who's been on an absolute tear since Taylor Hall has there's speculation about Taylor Hall, who the word on the street is he tore his ACL, which is absolutely that sucks for this team. And then Dmitry Orlov, a guy who was not really known for scoring and getting points on Washington, but he stepped into his role here in Boston and is absolutely dominated. He's been playing awesome. He's been scoring. He's been assisting guys. I think he's had at least 1 point in every single game that he's played in thus far as a Bruin. And this 7-1 game is just a summary of what the Bruin season is, right? Against a team that it's not as good as you would, a young, fun, exciting team. We will see the Buffalo Sabres be competing in the NHL for years to come, in my opinion. This is a young, fun, up-and-coming team. And how I would compare them to, I will compare them to the Seattle Mariners in baseball, right?
Okay.
A team that it's like, okay, they got a young stud. Tage Thompson is that young stud on the Sabres, who you would compare to Julio Rodriguez, and they have the ability and they have the cap to make moves in the offseason and make trades to either they have draft capital, right? So they can either improve for the future or they can kind of trade some of those assets and get bigger name stars who are free agents who are on the trade block come this summer. And let's talk about the matchup of the weekend between the Bruins and the Rangers, right? This is a lot of people's Eastern Conference Finals prediction. These are 2 teams that went all in at the deadline, right? You want to talk about the Rangers and some of the acquisitions they got, obviously headlining that Patrick Kane. And then earlier in the season, or not earlier in the season, but a few weeks back, they got Vladimir Tarasenko, who's an absolute goal scorer. This is a very deep team, and this was another one of those games where the Bruins never really had – this was never in doubt for the Bruins. Charlie Coyle got it started to start the – or to end the – I'm sorry, Coyle scored And then they scored right away in the second period. They scored a shorthanded goal. And that was the kind of the turning point in this game. That put them up 2-0, where, okay, now the Rangers are just playing catch up, right? And the Rangers are a very good power play team. And for us to get a shorthanded goal, that changed the entire momentum. That just put us in the driver's seat for the rest of the game. And then you got this was Tyler Bertuzzi, recent acquisition for them. This is a huge pickup for them, especially because, like I said, Taylor Hall is there. He's getting a second opinion. We don't know. We're speculating, but he could be out for the rest of the season. Tyler Bertuzzi steps into that role and does it a pretty damn good job. He got a point with his assist, his 11th assist of the season. And first period, Charlie Coyle scored. Then you got Nosek, who scored the shorthanded one. And then the Rangers came back, scored a power play goal. As I said, that power play unit has been dominant for the Rangers. And then you have your captain and your assistant captain scoring 2 goals in the third period to ice it, essentially, with Bergie scoring. And then you have Pasternak, who scored an absolute scorcher. McAvoy, and Dmitry Orlov, like I said, he had another assist in this game. That's a guy who, thank God we got him. That adds a lot more to this team.
Yep.
And then Lafreniere scored with a minute and a half left. It really didn't mean much, but another excellent game out of Linus Ullmark. They were peppering him with shots in the first period, and he withheld it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's something that he's been doing all season. And I just want to say, you said Swayman's game against Buffalo on Thursday was his best of the season. How about that? Swayman getting some love, because on the previous episode, we were talking about their game against Edmonton, and they have a big game coming up on Thursday, which I'd like to hear your thoughts about after this. But you said against Edmonton on February 27th, that was probably Swayman's best game all year against a very tough team, only letting in 2 goals and making sure that we walked out of there with a win. Just going up his very next game, only gives up 1 goal. We win 7-1. Good. I mean, we have 2 solid goalies right now. Ullmark, the best goalie in the league, and Swayman, who has been impressing as of late. I remember earlier in the season, it was those games. I mean, when we were losing, I feel like it was every single time we were losing, he was the one in net. But I mean, he's finding something. Maybe Swayman's teaching him, or Ullmark's teaching him a thing or two. But going into Edmonton on Thursday at the Garden Stav, obviously getting a 3-2 win against them a week ago. How do we see this game going? Do we continue this crazy win streak that we've been on? After this, we have Detroit for a couple of games, Chicago, Winnipeg. I like our schedule after this, but just over this little hump stuff.
Going forward, I mean, we don't know who's going to be in net. Obviously, that doesn't come out until the morning of, essentially. Yep. But I would assume that Linus Ullmark will be in net for this game. And you need to have your best players on the ice when you're going up against this Edmonton Oilers team, who probably has the best line in hockey. When you talk about Connor McDavid, who has a ridiculous 122 points. He has 52 goals on the season. That's 8 more goals than David Pasternak. And what sucks about being a Bruins fan right now, essentially, is how long we have to wait for this game. Essentially a week apart in games, where we obviously played Saturday. Now we got to wait all the way until Thursday to play this game. But this is going to be a fun game. I mean, anytime that the Edmonton Oilers play, you expect to see goals, you expect to see points, and that's kind of to the demise of the Oilers as well, because that defense of the Oilers sucks. So every time that the Oilers play, the line is set at like 6.5 for goals for the over/under, and it's never a bad bet to bet the over, because McDavid's probably going to get 2 himself and have 3 assists. So it was funny on the broadcast, actually, on Saturday. They were talking about how Connor McDavid had an off game and he still had like 2 assists. Like that's a pretty damn good game for everyone else. But these 2 lineups match up awesomely. Yeah. But our defense is way better. I think we can win this game.
And it was fun in the first matchup, as we said. And with Ullmark and net in the second, I mean, let's see what he can do against the best player and as you said, the best line in hockey. But with that being said, I think that about wraps it up, right, guys?
Yeah.
Are we good?
Yeah, that's it.
Well,
action-packed.
Yeah, big episode as always. 3 sports. We got a lot of action coming this week as well. So make sure you guys keep up on Celtics. We will be back with the Red Sox. World Baseball Classic is kind of putting a little end to spring training a little early, but I kind of want to talk a little bit about that too once we get to that time. We got a lot to cover, conference tournaments coming up as well. But with that being said, we will catch you guys on the next episode, and peace.